right. Thank you, everybody, for hanging on with us through that technology challenge. We knew it was going to happen at some point, but I feel like I'm still counting it as a win. We still have been doing pretty good with technology stuff. So, first, what is an advocacy campaign? Because we do have quite a few people are saying, I'm not quite sure what an advocacy campaign is, or I don't know it at all. Or maybe you've heard of it, but you don't really know how to plan one at all. You're like, I know what it is, but what the heck? I don't know. How do I make that? So if you don't know what an advocacy campaign is, first, it really is uh, taking action to promote some kind of a cause or a goal or raise awareness of a particular issue. So an advocacy campaign is really that simple. You can advocate as a kid, as a high schooler, you can advocate for a better lunchroom, or you can be an adult and you can advocate to elected officials to make some changes. Also, if you're a kid and you want to advocate to elected officials, you can do that too. So really, it's promoting a certain cause, a goal, or a issue, raising awareness around a certain issue. And of course, like advocacy campaigns, groups of organizations or individuals can advocate. You can do that as a coalition. You can do that as individuals. You can do that as a block club. But really, the main focus of what is an advocacy campaign is a very specific effort that you are trying to change something, and it's very specific. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. So to just put it pretty short, it's changing what is to what should be. So you're advocating to change something to what it is now to what you think it should be. So many of you are already advocates, and you maybe you knew that, maybe you didn't. So this is sort of the stages of advocacy, an advocacy campaign, which is really a plan. Is really just simply put is a plan. And it goes in a circle, and it's constant going in a circle, because if you want to make long lasting change, sometimes you have to really be committed to doing this over time. And so you may be at one of these stages in the campaign development, at any point in time. And so, of course, the first one is know what you want to change. A lot of us know what we want to change already, and identify what is the best way to do that. Come up with a plan, and then start to create an action plan. And I know a lot of the groups here have action plans for their neighborhood. So, an advocacy campaign could be a really small version of that. Maybe part of your neighborhood plan is that you want to advocate for an improved park. Maybe it's you want to advocate for slower traffic. But you might want to build that as part of your neighborhood plan. And then monitoring your progress and evaluating your progress. That is a really important part of continuing that cycle of long-term change. You can create an advocacy campaign, do it for a year. Great, we got something changed, and then just let it go, and things might just go back the way they were. So, and you can monitor your progress throughout the entire time. You don't have to wait for the end to look and see how is it going. You don't have to say, oh, it's a 12-month campaign, so we'll make the plan at month 1 and then we'll check and see how it's going at month 12. You might need it to have checked at month 3 to see how it was going. So it's really important to have a plan, and you can have that written in a notebook, you can have it written on a computer, you can have it written on a chalkboard, but write it down somewhere that you have a plan, you know what's next, and you're going to check in with that plan throughout the process. So, one of the first things that's important to this is figuring out why you want to solve this problem, why you want to make this change. So, why is this a problem in your community or in your neighborhood, or why is it important? Is that the first thing that you should tackle? Figure out what is your why. Maybe it's not the most important thing, but a lot of people rally around it. So maybe your why is, I want to bring people together around an issue to start some momentum for something bigger. You don't always have to tackle the biggest thing right away. Or maybe you do want to solve the biggest thing right away because you already have a momentum. So it really just depends on where you are in the process and what you're kind of working with. But again, the biggest thing is to pay attention, read the news, talk to your neighbors, look at the data that already exists, and come up with a plan. You know, and it doesn't have to be a big long super long plan, but it has to have some kind of steps that are, like what Quincy was just saying in our previous session, delegating responsibilities to other folks and saying, okay, my plan is we're going to clean up this particular area. And part of our plan is I'm going to talk to this person, that person, and this person. And those three are going to be my go-to to help get these different areas fixed up, or um whatever your issue is that you want to get fixed up. I just used that one because we just were talking about it. So but that really is a really big part of it, is making sure you're paying attention to what is going on, where the energy is right now, because sometimes the thing that you want to go after might need to wait a little bit, just because there's a way to get excitement and energy and momentum and bring that group with you to move the bigger pieces that you want to get moved. So again, part of that is to really have a very clear solution or goal or an ask. So when you're thinking about the advocacy campaign itself, a lot of times we're talking about marketing and flyers and getting the word out. So a campaign, you can design a campaign that's all online and videos and posters, and all of that is considered an advocacy campaign as well. But so is going and knocking on your neighbors' doors and letting them know what you're trying to do, and passing out just flyers and saying we're all going to go to city council. We're all going to say this when we get there. That's also an advocacy campaign. You don't have to have you know a ton of marketing money and commercials on TV and things in magazines. That helps certainly, especially for big things. But getting your neighbors all together and on the same page is also advocacy work. And that also can be an advocacy campaign. It's more of a word of mouth campaign, putting things in the newsletter. So putting things in our voice, our community, putting things in that paper, going and speaking at Flint Neighborhoods United. That's all part of an advocacy campaign. And so if you're proposing a solution to elected officials or to your neighborhood groups, or to residents, to other neighbors who maybe are not as gung-ho about changing. Maybe they're like, oh, it's not going to work. This is frustrating. Why do you think your suggestion is going to work? What kind of examples and evidence might you have from other communities that you can include in your advocacy campaign? I'm going to keep calling it an advocacy campaign, but you could call it anything you want to call it. It's really just a way of getting the word out about what you want to do, why you want to do it, and how come you think that that is a good fit for your neighborhood and your community, and what is the plan behind it. So be prepared with those examples and those kind of evidence that it works in other places, it might work here, or pieces of it might work here. And again, referring to other things we learned about in the 6 weeks that we've all been together, the SMART goal worksheet that Ashley provided, I think day one, I think that might have been day one or day two. That is a really, really good way to get your advocacy campaign designed. So again, we call it an advocacy campaign, but that's just semantics. That's just words. It's really having a plan for change. Neighbors Changing Flint, you can call it, this is my neighbors changing whatever neighborhood you're in. It's a plan for you. Your goal is to do a specific thing. These are the steps. This is who's responsible for it. This is when we want it to get done. And we're going to follow up throughout in that little circle. Again, we're going to follow up. It's a 12-month plan. We don't need to wait till month 12 to check and see how we're doing, because you might not be doing that hot if you don't check on it for 12 months. So again, using that kind of template that we already received, you can use that same kind of structure around the advocacy campaign. And then again, like some of the things that you might want to consider is just doing some research about what are the other groups that are close to you? What have they been doing? Have they been struggling with the same issue? Go and talk to other people I know that Eartha talked to Edna about what was going on. I know other people have talked to Quincy and they don't live in his neighborhood, but they want to know how's he making some changes. I know Charlotte and Mark are talking about how their challenges might be similar and how can they work together, or what's worked in your neighborhood that might work in mine. Do some research in that way. And again, you don't have to have tons of spreadsheets and lots of things like that. You can put that in a folder and you can put it in a notebook. You can put on your iPhone if you want to, or your Android, I guess. If you like Androids, you can do that. um, Green bubble, blue bubble, it doesn't matter. Keep track of who's doing what, when they're going to do it, and are you following up on, is it getting done? um, and then some of the other things that we've shared, I think in some of our previous sessions, are doing some public comments. And that doesn't have to be really complicated or difficult. It can be, but you can create like a one pager that you want everybody in the group to have when they go to council, or when they put it on speakerphone while they're waiting in their living room until their 3 minutes are there, as we all are experiencing the very long city council meetings in Flint. So maybe you put your phone on speaker, you're waiting for your turn for public comment, maybe you're making dinner. That is the one thing that I really like about virtual meetings now, is we don't have to wait at night at City Hall that whole time. We can wait in our house while we're making dinner and taking care of our family and kids and things like that. But maybe you create some kind of one pager that everybody in the group has, and maybe your group is 3, 4, 5 people. That's fine, because now if you have 3, 4, 5 people speaking and saying the same kinds of information from your plan, then city council is hearing it 3, 4, 5 times that night. And again, if somebody's like, well, I don't have the email, I missed the message, if you can send them a text message, or drop it off at their house, just here's what we're planning to say. And you only get 3 minutes when you go to city council. You get a lot longer if you go to other things, if you go to meetings and sit down with people and things like that. But if you only have 3 or 4 minutes to speak, you're not going to give people a whole book to read. So it might be easy to give them something that they can pull up on their phone and go, okay, I got my notes that I want to say about our advocacy campaign, which is we want to slow traffic in our neighborhood. This is how we want to do it in my neighborhood, and I'm going to read this about what the issue is. Great. Okay, great. My 3 minutes are up. Now it's Edna's turn, and she's going to say something very similar. Another thing people do when they have a specific plan and maybe they want to speak for a long time at council, and I just say council because that's my experience, but if you run out of time, if you have a group of people and everybody gets 3 minutes, you might all speak on something a little bit different in that list of things that you want to cover. So if I really wanted to speak for 15 minutes about something, but I only get 5 minutes, I'm going to bring two other people so they each get 5 minutes. And then we did talk for 15 minutes about the issue. So those are just like little tricks that you can do. If your time is limited, combine time. We got a plan. There's 6 of us. We each get 3 minutes. Everybody say, you're going to talk about part A, you're talking about part B. Great. Our advocacy plan is getting out there. That's all part of the plan. Ah, see, I really got to get better with this. And again, just do your homework. And this is a slide that I included in the handouts and things so that you can kind of take this page right out of the handout and just have it out and kind of say, all right, we're making our plan. Do we know about policies that already exist about this? Does anybody have any data that we know is being recorded? So especially traffic issues are what we're working on at the CRIM right now, with Neighborhood Engagement Hub. And you guys will hear about this on Wednesday from Kate and Michelle and Cade. But that's something that we were like, well, is anybody recording the traffic issues that are happening? What other kind of issues are there? Are there other neighborhoods that are dealing with this? And now I think, well, Michelle and Cade will know much better than me, but I think there's like 16 neighborhood groups that are represented with the traffic taming group now, because we reached out to everybody. We just kept asking people who else has this issue, who else has this concern. Um, just really combining your efforts all together. And then just another, this is just another aside, another thing that you can pull right out of the slides when you are working on the advocacy campaigns that you want to do in your neighborhoods. Again, this is something you could just take right out and go, all right, how do we talk about this with specific people? So changing the way that you talk about it, depending on who you're talking to, can also help. So even if you have that listed in your plan, maybe you have that typed out on a Google Doc, and it's like, okay, when we talk to elected officials, we're going to talk about it this way. When we talk to business owners, we're going to talk about it in a different way. We're going to say it's difficult for customers to get here because they're worried about blight. So if you're a business owner, your buy-in is going to be a little bit different. But for the person who's running the advocacy campaign, the goal is still the same. We want to get rid of blight. For neighborhoods and residents who live in the area, you might frame the conversation around like your house values. You want to make sure your kids feel safe. We need to advocate for this. Let's go. Let's do it. Oh, you're a business owner. You really want to make sure that all your customers feel safe and comfortable coming to your store so you can make a lot of money. Come on, you need to advocate for this too. So it might change the way you talk about it, but at the end of the day, that group is still all advocating for getting rid of blight. And so if you are coming up with a campaign, part of your campaign might be you might have a Google page that's like, okay, here's the page about how to talk about this with different audiences, or here's how to here's how to flip the script for the people that you're speaking to. And you might call it that. Oh, I'm talking to teachers, I'm talking to grandparents, I'm talking to kids, I'm talking to elected officials, business owners. They all might have a slightly different reason why they care about it. Kids care about the park because they want to play in the park. Parents care about the park because they're tired of being at home with their kids all the time. You know, People in the neighborhood care because it's something really nice and pretty to look at. And if it's really well taken care of and people are using it a lot, that keeps people from coming and doing stuff they're not supposed to do because it's a place that lots of people like to be and like to gather. So, and then of course, for business owners, they're like, cool, there's tons of people come here. So just think about that when you're thinking about how do we talk about it. And again, if there's people in your group who are not used to doing this, you can put it on a Google document and just give it to them and say, here's how you talk to different, like, here's the types of things you can cover when you're talking to different audiences. And it could just be little bullet points. And then I mentioned this a little bit already about the different ways that you can do an advocacy campaign. If you are the Michigan League for Public Policy, like Renell, you might be like, we need to buy ads on TV. We're going to go to the state. We're going to go to DC. We're all over, Isaiah's going to DC and LA and all these other places. If you're doing an advocacy campaign at home, in the county, that might look a little bit different. If you're doing it just in the city, that might look even more different. If you're doing it just in your ward, that might look even more different. So, just think about what level you are at and if it makes sense to just go door to door and hand out postcards, or if it makes sense to put some in the mail. The distracted driving or the traffic taming group, they came up with a pledge to just say that you don't want to just do distracted driving. It was a very low impact advocacy piece of the advocacy campaign, but it got people thinking about, oh yeah, I should not be driving while I'm distracted. Okay, all right, this is important to me. What else is this group working on? And so that was almost a way of just getting people interested in what is the group doing and how can you get involved. And having petitions is a really, really great way to just raise awareness. And we're all virtual and everything right now, but we can't leave out people that are not going to do Zoom and not going to do Facebook. They don't want to be on the computer all the time, or they are on the computer all the time and they're tired of it. I personally took like a year-long break away from Facebook because it was just exhausting. So helping out the people in your group, even if there's 3 or 4 or 5 of you, maybe there's 16 of you. Having a draft like phone script is really useful. Just having some talking points if somebody wants to call their friends and their family and say, hey, we're working on this campaign to slow down traffic in the neighborhood, and I was wondering if you want to join us. um, just having like, how do I, well, I don't know how to talk to my friends and family about it. Here's the script, here's some talking points, some things that you can cover, some things that say like, well, your kids go to this school, this intersection is a hot spot, that's why it's important, and that's why you should be a part of it, because you don't want your kids to get hit by a car. Or you live by this park and this is how many kids have gotten hit by cars going to that park. This is why we think you should be involved. We're going to go to city council in 3 weeks and we're going to talk about this and this, would you come with us? We want to show up in numbers. Sending stuff to the newspaper and asking them to run an opinion piece. That's really, really helpful, because everybody starts to see it, hear about it, learn about it. And then the people who are our elected officials and our community servants, they they have to respond once it starts to become really a common topic. And so they'll just start hearing about it all the time. And they're like, okay, I guess I got to do something about this, because I'm going to keep hearing about it if I don't. And I'm just going to check the chat, because trying to do better. Last time social media, I took a really long time. So I'm
You're good, T. I've been watching.
awesome. Thank you. And when you are speaking to elected officials, whether you're going to the Capitol or you're going to the city or a county board, it's really useful to mention where you live. And if you're in the city, mentioning what ward you live in or what streets you live on, if you don't know your ward, or just what neighborhood or part of town, that's really helpful as well, because the people who serve that area will pay close attention because they want you to vote for them again, right? And the same thing goes if you go to Lansing, mentioning where do you live in the state, because the people who want you to vote for them, they're going to be paying attention to what your needs are, because you're their constituent. They serve you. That is what their role is. They work for us. So I always try to keep that in mind. They work for me. I'm not going to be intimidated, because they work for me. They want me to vote for them. So try not to be intimidated. But if you are intimidated and you get nervous, write it down on an index card, write it down on a half sheet of paper. These are the things I want to cover. I get nervous when I'm speaking in public, or I get nervous when I'm speaking to somebody new. So I'm just going to write it down on a half sheet of paper. Um, those are like my like little tricks. And then some of the other things that I think are really important to consider is to follow up and say thank you to those folks. It's not always easy to be in that position. It's mostly never easy to be in the position of being a public servant. So say thank you when they do respond and when they are receptive. If they're respectful and listening and they're responsive, just send them an email, write them a letter, send them a card. You can get little thank you cards at the store, and just send them and say, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. They'll remember you that way. They're more likely to take your phone calls. They're more likely to listen to what you have to say, because they feel like you respect their time as well. Sorry. Yet again, I'm gonna just I gotta get I'm gonna just turn my mouse off because I keep doing that. So I included this in the packet as well as a letter writing campaign. I'm not going to read all of these steps to you, because this slide in the packet is for you to keep. But when you are writing a letter campaign, I did just include these steps so that if you wanted to do that, you would have this to refer to. But people do letter writing campaigns to really just raise awareness and try to reach out to all of their elected officials that they can, whether they're on, like Quincy was saying, he's on the MTA board. So maybe what your concern is about public transportation. And so maybe you do send stuff to elected officials, but maybe you also send stuff to the resident advisory board. That's a really great step too. And so this really just gives you an outline of how to do that. Address a specific person Don't just say, dear board member, like put their name if you know their name. And most of that is public. So, find that out, goes back to that doing your homework, and say at the very beginning, as soon as they start reading it, why are you writing? you know, Dear Michael, I'm writing to you because I really love the neighborhood resource directory and I want to support it. How can I do that? Or maybe you're writing to city council and you're saying, Dear City Council, I've seen the draft neighborhood resource directory and I want everybody to be using this. Talk about your position, why it's important to you. Acknowledge anything that's happened before that the group that you're writing to or the elected official you're writing to has done. So if you're writing to a specific elected official and you know that they've made some kind of efforts around your issue, say like, say some, mention that and say like, thank you so much for the last thing that you did around this issue. I really think that we can do more. And if they haven't done anything around it, you can say, hey, I know you were at the last meeting about XYZ issue, and I'm sure this is something that you're going to be working on soon, even if you don't know if they really is something they're going to be working on soon, but they get the message that you're like, this is important. You should be working on it. Here's why I think you should work on it. I'm a constituent. I live in your area. These are all the things and the reasons why I want you to vote a certain way, install a certain kind of solution or infrastructure or intervention in a certain area. Really be specific about what it is you want. Um, and of course the letter writing campaign, that's just one element of a bigger thing. So your advocacy campaign could include, we're going to do a letter writing campaign, we're going to do social media, we're going to go door to door, and we're going to do postcards, and then we're going to show up at the county meetings or at the city council meetings. So that you could have 5 things in your advocacy plan. That's really what the plan is this is my goal and these are the ways we're going to get there. And maybe letter writing or postcards is one of those ways. And then and then of course, make sure you check for spelling and grammar issues. That's the last thing you want, is for somebody to be distracted because there's a grammar problem. But um you could also reach out to somebody like me and be like, hey, can you look this over, see if it sounds good? I'm going to send this to so and so, because that I want you to be successful. So and that's what I do. And then again, in your packet I gave you an example, and I highlighted different areas. This is something we did a few years ago. This was a state policy that we were trying to get changed, I believe. Yeah, this was a state policy. So I just highlighted a couple of the important pieces or important areas here. That's really, the reason I'm writing to you is this. What I would like to see is this. Uh, and then the purple part there is really more about like my personal experience. And you can make any kind of letter like that, and it doesn't have to be this complicated. This was going to a senator, so it's very specific. And because even kids can write letters to their elected officials, you know, hey, my name is so and so, I'm 12 years old, I want to see my park being taken better care of. This is why I think it should be taken care of better. This is what I think you need to do in order to make that happen. And then at the very end, I really strongly urge you to do this particular thing that I'm asking you to do, because I live in this area and it's important to me. And, if I'm 12, my mom and dad vote for you, or my grandparents, or whoever is taking care of you. My adults vote for you. This is important to me. Make this change. So even youth can do this. And so for the groups that are on who are hoping to do more youth engagement, that's a really cool youth engagement thing that you could do as well. You could have them draw pictures of the neighborhood and write a letter. You could have them do a video. Kids are really good with social media. You can have them do TikToks. You can have them do all kinds of stuff. And all of it could be around the issue you want to get taken care of. And so public comment, we talked about this a lot before, but it's very similar to letter writing, except you only get 3 minutes. So I talked about that a little bit in the beginning. And so I did mention this a lot already, but write out what you want to say, maybe even rehearse it if you get nervous doing public speaking, and just be really clear about what you want. And like always, get to what your point is right away. I am here today because I think we should do this, like very, very quickly. I'm here today because I want the speed limit reduced. Boom. That's why you're there. That's the main piece of your advocacy campaign. They don't have to know that it's part of a bigger connected campaign. They don't have to know that you're making that you have some students that are making postcards on Canva and sending them out to people. That's part of your campaign. But you're there, you're listening on the phone because we're all virtual. Your 3 minutes comes up. It's time for you to speak. I'm here to get this changed. This is why it should be changed. We're going to keep working on this. I'm going to keep coming back and asking for this until it gets changed. Very, very quick to the point because you only get 3 minutes, which goes really, really fast after you've waited 3 or 4 hours to speak. So, which I literally had happen to me. So be very specific about what you want. Oops.
So Teresa, we have a question in the chat from Mark. Mark asks, does it help to send a letter to a state politician regarding a local or city code?
It does. So the local and city governments, they get funding from state. So they get, there's different funding sources that trickle down to the city level or to the county level. And so it does help to write to your state elected officials and say, like, this is what we're struggling with in Flint. How can you help with this? How can you make something move? How can you help me to make something happen? I've been pushing and pushing for this locally, but I can't seem to make anything happen. Is there anything you can do to help move this forward? And I really wish that I don't think she's here, but there are. It's really good to get comfortable speaking to the staffers of our state elected officials because a lot of times the staffers will help you figure that out. Um, and Mark, I think there's a staffer that I want to introduce you to. So don't let me forget after this, okay? Because I think she can help you out. So don't let me forget. I'm sure you won't. And then on this slide here, I just included for you guys the information on how to access the city of Flint meetings while we're all virtual. And so you guys have all of this in your printout. Um, but I also included this electronically in the email that I sent out. And I believe you can click on these links in the electronic version. I think this still works that way. If it doesn't, you can copy and paste it into the computer. But you can also call. So you can watch the city council meetings on YouTube if you don't know that already. I'm sure most of you do, because I've probably seen most of you there or heard most of you there now. But you can also just call on the phone if you don't do Zoom or you don't want to because you're tired of being on Zoom. You can just call and listen. It is a little bit more challenging to just listen, but you can also just watch it on YouTube. Um, and when it is your turn, you do get 3 minutes, and they are very strict about that 3 minutes. They start your time and they will interrupt you to stop that time. So just be really concise. Um, it's frustrating when you've waited for multiple hours and then they're so strict on how much time you get. So just be prepared for that. And then the other thing you can do if you're like, I really don't want to do public speaking, I really don't want to wait hours and hours to talk, you can just submit written comments as well. And what you can also do to kind of speak to Mark's point, you can submit those written comments and make a copy of those and say, hey, state elected official, this is what I've been working on. Here's the last thing that I sent to city council. Oh, it's been months and nothing's changed. I need some help. What do I do? you can do that, especially now everything is a little easier to kind of keep everything together. But that's one little tip, I guess, that you could do. But yeah, and I know the city council, they just released all the dates for 2021 recently. So I believe you can find all of them still on this website, cityofflint.com/COVID-19 public meetings. I believe that all is still there. But if it isn't there anymore, you can also call Davina at the city and say, hey, I noticed that the public notices aren't in the same spot now. Where did they go? Because they were put there because of COVID-19. So if they do move them because we're trying to make our way out of COVID-19, they may move them to a different area eventually. So, but you can call the deputy city clerk and just find out, like, hey, I can't find that now. And just call. And if you can't find it or you just aren't getting a response, again, reach out to your your neighborhood engagement hub, reach out to your Crim Fitness Foundation or your SAGE group and say, I'm trying to get this thing done and I'm really up against a wall. I need some help. And to be honest, we might run into a wall too. So it takes some time sometimes to knock that wall down and get done what we need to get done. But if you all are together, it happens a little. It can happen, and it does take time. And so again, that's why the civic engagement is so important. That's why who you vote for is so important. State level, local level, county level, boards, all of that stuff is critical because when it comes time to make some change in the community and you feel like it's just dragging, uh, start looking at who we are voting for and start deciding like, do I want to vote for you again? Because when I was trying to make some changes happen, I wasn't getting a response. Or maybe you got a response and you didn't like the response, that might be a little bit different. But again, that kind of goes back to why being involved is so important, because these are the folks that are going to either make it an easier system to navigate or make it a more difficult system to navigate. But again, having that plan all together of what's my goal, how are we getting there, who's going to be part of it, and when are we going to check in about how it's going, and when are we going to decide we need to pivot or make a change or do something different, or maybe we were successful halfway through. Do we want to keep momentum going and do something new, do something different, build off of what we've already done? What's next for us? So having that plan is helpful. I always advise have it in writing, because if you get tired or something happens, you can hand it off to somebody else and go, I'm moving or I'm just exhausted. I got family things going on, but I don't want this work to stop. Here's the notebook that I was keeping everything in. Here's the file on my Google Drive. Here's the file on my computer. Keep it going. I want to make sure this continues. Let me know if I can help by speaking at a meeting. Send me those talking points and I'll speak up too. So that's essentially how you can get started with making an advocacy campaign. I have a lot of resources at the office, which is now just my spare bedroom. But if you need any resources, I am happy to share. I did include a couple of things in the packet. So I included an Advocacy 101 worksheet, well, a one pager, kind of just some tips about advocacy and what kind of how to approach it, just things that to think about. And then I also included a little worksheet of just brainstorming. What are we working on? Why are we working on it? Who's going to help us work on it? Thinking through those questions. And some of those questions you might be like, I don't know. And that's okay too. I'm not sure yet. Ooh, gotta work this out with the group. Put I have no idea. Find out from Crim, can they help? I don't know. Find out from the city planning, can they help? Went to Crim and they didn't know what to do either. We're going to go to this person. Just it's okay to not know those answers either, but it's important to know that you need to find those answers. So I will stop there just so we can have a little bit of time to either answer those final questions. I know that uh, that the little thing is going to turn off. So we're going to have Michael kind of walk us through those questions again. And I'm just going to check and see if there's any questions here in the chat. Let's see. What are your thoughts on several people sending a copy of the same letter or message to several politicians? I think that's a great idea and you should do it. If they're getting the same message over and over again from different people, it's important. If you're calling, so the staffers, I have friends who are staffers, and you guys know some of those staffers like Karma, that they get phone calls and phone calls and phone calls and phone calls and phone calls. And they have to write down those phone calls and phone calls and phone calls and phone calls. And they have to go to their boss and say, we had 29 calls about this particular topic. You got to respond to this. Or if they, and of course, it's like the further out, the larger their service area is, they wouldn't call it the service area. If they're covering the state or they're covering the country, they're going to get more and more and more and more phone calls and emails. So if you have a email that you're like, copy and paste this email, send it to this guy or this woman or whoever it is that's in charge of the thing that you care about, I'm going to tell all the people in my group to copy and paste and send this out. Then people who are staffers, like our wonderful, beautiful Karma, are going to be sitting down with their boss and going, we got 115 emails about this one issue. We got to do something. So that is really a beautiful idea, Mark. It's really smart. Do I have
One thing that I would add to that real quick is that a lot of times I think it's even more effective if you have sort of a fill in the blank section of that letter where you can describe, this is how this issue has personally affected me.
Yes.
So I think the form letter idea is great. There are ways that you can kind of tweak that format though.
And it kind of goes back to this too, where part of this the little purple part here was, we all know as cyclists and bicyclists, we do this. This one was a little more like kind of big, but I think that's in here too, is, just it's describing like what your experience has been and where you live. Like Michael said, being able to say, and this is important to me because I experienced XYZ. This is important to me because I have a park across the street and, 3 people got hit by cars this year. And this is why I care about this. That I'm really glad you mentioned that, Michael, that those stories, especially Mark, if you're writing to folks at the state level to help with something local, including those like stories can sometimes motivate them to do something because there's emotion behind it and there's energy behind it. Especially if they're a little more distanced from it, that can kind of put a little bit of pressure on them. I really like that you said that. Are there any other questions or any other suggestions or advice from anybody on the planning committee? All right. I made it in my time. I appreciate all of you. And if anybody is interested in any kind of advocacy work or doing some things, please just let me know. I am a resource. We are working on getting the SAGE group kind of back re-energized. I know some of you were at the meeting that we've just had recently. And that is the group where we do think through a lot of these kind of things. So look forward to working with a lot of you on some of these issues. I know working with Mark and Eartha and Charlotte on a couple of things. So I appreciate you guys. This is our second to last session. So I'm going to let Michael walk us through Poll Everywhere since it's going to disappear for me. Dang it.
So again, this is the same question as before. So the question is, and I think I can actually, I will copy and paste this into the chat. The prompt is, I know how to create an advocacy campaign. So if you definitely know how to create an advocacy campaign, again, you can either go to the URL pollev.com/COF community. That link is in the chat box. If you definitely know how to create an advocacy campaign, that's the letter A. If you mostly do, that is the letter B. If you're not sure, that's letter C. Mostly not sure how to create an advocacy campaign, that is letter D. And if you definitely do not know how to create an advocacy campaign, that is the letter E. And it looks like we got a few answers in here. All right, beautiful. So we are at 73% mostly yes, 27% definitely yes. Yeah, so that's a good improvement. We have the vast majority now in mostly yes, where before we had a majority not sure. So good to know.
Thank you all so much. I'm going to put my information in the chat. I know that you all get emails from me all the time, but I also know that you get lots of emails from lots of people all the time now. So I'm going to put my contact information here. So if you need anything from me, you are more than welcome to give me a call. Yeah, this is where I'll be, in my guest room. All right, cool. All right, Ashley, you want to take us out?
Sure. So again, just want to say thank you to everybody for being with us this evening. We know that it was a really lovely day out today, and sometimes when it's beautiful outside, it's difficult to hold yourself up in the house in the evening. So just want to say thank you for taking the time out to be with us. We are almost there. We have one final day for this, the 2021 series of Neighbors Changing Flint. Thank you for sticking with us, and we hope to see you on Wednesday. Teresa, can you remind me what sessions we have on Wednesday?
On Wednesday, we will be talking about COVID-19 and the vaccine. The Healthy Flint Research Coordinating Center and the Genesee County Health Department will be kicking us off at 6 o'clock with that. And it will be primarily Q&A. So they're going to do a short presentation and then answer lots of questions about the vaccine, about where we are in the county with battling COVID. And then at 7 o'clock, we will be wrapping everything up with talking with the Traffic Taming Task Force and their efforts to slow traffic in the city and how they've kind of grown over the last couple of years. And so that'll be with Cade Surface from the CRIM, Michelle, who has been with us throughout this series from Neighborhood Engagement Hub, and then Kate Cole, who is on the east side. So please be with us then. And if you miss any of the sessions, we do have our own domain name now. So we are neighborschangingflint.org. You can just go to neighborschangingflint.org and you can find all of the past sessions, even from last summer. And we hope to keep that domain name as we continue the series. And if you are interested, so this is my final plug before we all disperse. If you are interested in helping to make this program awesome, we are going to be working on a resident advisory committee for this program. And so be on the lookout for that. We got to work on the materials and all of that kind of stuff, but we do want to have residents really like guiding, what are we teaching? How are we teaching it? Who's presenting? That kind of stuff. Because, you know, we need to make sure we're planning the best program that we can plan. And you guys are the experts about what you need to learn about and want to learn about for your neighborhoods. So thank you guys so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. Keep your ears peeled for information about that advisory committee. And we'll see you Wednesday.